Hello everyone. Welcome to this Creative Engagement and Creative Learning pre-recorded information session. We are excited to be speaking with you again this year, so thank you for joining us. My name is Flannery Winchester, and I'm the Program Assistant for Grants and Services at LMCC. So just a few housekeeping notes before we get started. Please note that this session is intended for returning applicants to help to refresh your memory of the Creative Engagement and Creative Learning programs and to ensure that you're aware of a few things that are different this year. If you are a new applicant, we are thrilled that you're interested in an LMCC grant program. However, you are required to attend an interactive information session webinar with a live question and answer session with LMCC staff. You can always reference this recording later on, but please register for a live information session webinar at lmcc.net/RSVP. We look forward to meeting you there. If you are an Upper Manhattan-based individual artist or nonprofit organization, you are also likely eligible for LMCC's UMass Arts Engagement Grant Program. We will not be covering information related to UMass Arts Engagement today, but we encourage you to also attend a UMass Arts Engagement live webinar for additional support for your Upper Manhattan activities. This session does have the option for closed captioning. To activate them, click on the wheel icon corresponding to settings located in the lower bar menu. Select subtitles, and then you can adjust the size and color of the captions as needed. Throughout the session, we will be referencing program resources and links that you will need as you begin to work on your application. All of these links are included in the video summary located below. During this session, we will provide an in-depth overview of creative engagement and creative learning. But before we start, I want to quickly share more information about LMCC as a reminder of who we are. LMCC was founded in 1973 on the belief that arts and artists are vital to communities throughout New York City. Today, LMCC serves, connects, and makes space for artists and community through artist residencies, grant funding, and free cultural events, including our flagship River to River Festival taking place every summer. You can find more information about LMCC's programs at lmcc.net or by subscribing to our newsletter. And as I mentioned before, I'm a part of the Grants and Services Department, which administers our 3 Manhattan Arts Grants programs, as well as free professional development workshops for artists in the Creative Aging Artist Residency, SUCASA. So let's go ahead and get started. During this session, we will be talking about 2 programs, Creative Engagement and Creative Learning. We'll cover the program goals, what we can support and cannot support. We'll talk about which funding source you are eligible for and the key differences that you'll want to pay attention to as you're deciding which grant program is most appropriate for your project, keeping in mind that you can only apply to either Creative Engagement or Creative Learning and not both. We'll take a look at the review process and the criteria, as well as the timeline for hearing back to us after you've submitted your application. And finally, we'll take a look at the application form itself, and we will share some important tips to keep in mind as you start your application. We do ask that you please watch this entire session. It's roughly an hour in length, and it is comprehensive. And our goal in this session is to help you to understand the programs and share key pieces of advice to help you to strengthen your proposals. After you conclude watching, you'll want to make sure to read through the full program guidelines for complete requirements and visit the online application form to familiarize yourself with any updates that we have made to the online application. Links to all of these materials are included in the video summary available below and at lmcc.net. There are 2 new elements that we want to call out right now. First, this year we are expanding how we think about public programming and are able to consider proposals for online programming in 2021 in both grant programs. In a few minutes, we'll share some examples for project activities, including both in-person and online presentations for creative engagement, as well as distance learning arts education projects, CreativeLearning. Second, a lesson plan is now required for CreativeLearning. And we're going to share more information about this later in the session. Now, before we start to talk about the programs, two more important notes. First, the application deadline is Tuesday, September 29th, 2020 at 5 p.m. Write it down in your calendar, circle it. This is when you must have submitted the application by. Second, on the screen, you'll find LMCC's phone and email contact information so that you can get in touch with our staff for any questions that you may have during the application process. And we do recommend that you reach out to us early on as our time does become more limited as we get closer to the application deadline. Also, this year, our staff are available through virtual office hours. You can find the schedule of office hours at lmcc.net/RSVP. And during these sessions, you can drop in, ask a question about your project, proposal, or the programs themselves. And meetings will be taking place throughout the month of August. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive right in. We're going to begin with a broad overview of creative engagement and creative learning and what their different program goals are. And then we'll talk about who and what each program is for. So to set the stage, all of LMCC's grant programs are re-grants. This is a term that we use a lot, and we want to make sure that you know what we mean. So for the Creative Engagement and Creative Learning re-grant programs, LMCC receives a block of funding from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, or DCLA, and the New York State Council on the Arts, or NYSCA. And we then re-grant those funds in smaller amounts to individual artists, collectives, and nonprofit arts organizations who cannot access funding directly from these agencies. City funds are provided by the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, which runs re-grant programs in all 5 boroughs through the Greater New York Arts Development Fund. State funds are provided by the New York State Council on the Arts, which runs re-grant programs in all 62 counties of the state through the Greater New York Arts, through its decentralization program. And these funds, again, are intended for individuals, groups, and organizations that are not already accessing city and state funds from NYSCA or DCLA. And LMCC runs these programs specifically for the borough of Manhattan. And since this is public funding, artists and organizations must be based in Manhattan, with the public activities of your projects being carried out in Manhattan. So unfortunately, this does mean that there is no cross-borough funding. So if you live in or are based in another borough, please make sure to contact your local borough arts council to receive information on their programs. And as I mentioned earlier, you can only apply to either Creative Engagement or Creative Learning. And within the application form for each program, you can request city and or state funds depending on your eligibility for each, which we'll cover a little bit later. And because we are talking about our 2021 grant cycle, projects for both Creative Engagement and Creative Learning must take place between January 1st and December 31st, 2021. So anytime within the 2021 calendar year. So now we want to talk to you about what each program is for. We're going to start with Creative Engagement, and then I'll come back around to talk about Creative Learning after. Creative Engagement supports artists and arts organizations who are creating publicly accessible projects. This program covers a really wide range of activities, artistic genres, and disciplines, including performances, concerts, screenings, exhibitions, public art, social practice, readings, festivals, and we're always open to new ideas. And we believe that experiencing rich artistic work is at the core benefit to the public. So this means that the public must have an opportunity to participate in or attend an artistic event or program. projects may include more traditional forms of audience engagement, such as the opportunity to attend a theatrical performance, as well as more innovative forms, such as the opportunity to participate in socially engaged practices. As we all continue to understand how we can safely gather next year, given our city's continued response to the COVID-19 pandemic, we are expanding our previous parameters around public-facing presentations and programming for FY21 to include online programming. So this means that projects designed to be experienced partially or entirely online are eligible for 2021, provided that the virtual activities offer an opportunity for live or active participation for Manhattan audiences. Now let's go ahead and talk about some examples of projects that we can support through Creative Engagement to help you to imagine some formats for next year. And these are based on what we have supported in previous years, as well as some of the project adaptations and adjustments that we've seen from our current 2020 grantees. So you may be considering projects for in-person events at parks or outdoor venues, as well as events for small intimate audiences, such as a visual artist creating a public art mural with the collaboration of a Harlem Community Center helping to cite it and on view year-long, or a theater group presenting contemporary dramas entirely in Spanish for an intimate audience, allowing for social distance seating at a Lower East Side Cultural Center, or a Washington Heights Music Ensemble producing and performing a series of short concerts at Inwood Hill Park with an option for audiences to view the performances online through Facebook or YouTube Live. You may also be considering online activities or series events, such as a theater group premiering a radio play, where people can join a live YouTube event to listen to the pre-recorded play, followed by a talkback with the artist. Or a virtual one-day community-based multi-arts festival, presenting short films, screenings, poetry readings, and a jazz jam session for Manhattan audiences to tune into or participate in virtually. Or a dance organization presenting a new work performed live and broadcasted via Zoom for a 1-hour online event for Manhattan audiences. Great, so that was Creative Engagement. Now let's go ahead and shift gears to talk about Creative Learning, which is our arts education program. And this is already one of the biggest differences between these two programs. So Creative Learning supports teaching artists and arts organizations who are working in community-based settings to realize their projects. So you may be wondering what we mean when we say a community-based setting. Basically, here we're talking about any setting that is outside of the classroom or K-12 school system. So projects can take place in libraries, senior centers, after-school programs, or community and recreation centers. Creative Learning supports arts education projects and programming for participants of any age group. So you may be working with young students, seniors, or perhaps your project is targeted more towards an intergenerational group of participants. We are interested in the depth of engagement for the participants, so we do require at least 3 sequential learning sessions between the same teaching artist and group of participants. And there are 2 new elements in Creative Learning that we'd like to point out this year. So number 1, we will consider distance learning activities that are offered solely online or via other personal media for 2021. Please note that projects that are designed for entirely remote instruction must offer opportunities for live or synchronous participation with the teaching artist. And outreach and marketing plans must demonstrate reach to Manhattan-based participants. Number 2, we will be asking you to provide a lesson plan this year. So this is a new requirement, and within this particular document, you will need to share your arts education methodologies, teaching goals, and evaluation methods. And I'll talk more about the lesson plan later in this session. And related to Creative Learning, we do have 2 things to remind you of. First, teaching artists can apply in the same fiscal year to both Creative Learning and SUCASA, so long as it is for 2 different projects. And as a reminder, SUCASA is LMCC's Creative Aging program that is presented in partnership with DCLA and City Council. Second, all applicants requesting and awarded state funds may use up to $200 of your state award for participating teaching artists to attend professional development training or on curriculum development or best practices in arts education. So let's go ahead and end this section with a few examples of projects that could be supported through Creative Learning in 2021. So again, you may have a project that is designed to meet in person, such as a series of weekly Cantonese opera music learning sessions in Chinatown, engaging local senior citizens and culminating in a concert, or an after-school program that blends a dance and life skill development curriculum over the course of 4 sessions. You may also be considering distance learning activities, such as a series of distance learning multilingual poetry workshops for seniors in Washington Heights of all levels, meeting weekly by phone to develop key skills and craft individual poems, and culminating in a publication. Or a 6-week workshop series meeting over video conference for young people of diverse abilities to engage in theater activities while developing communication skills and increased understanding of the world. Perfect. So now we've just talked about what creative engagement and creative learning are each for. So now let's talk about what our funds can and cannot be used for. We will start with some general ideas that apply to both creative engagement and creative learning, and then end with a few specifics to creative learning only. So, what can these grant funds be used for? Our grants can generally go towards any administrative and production costs that are directly related to realizing the proposed project, with an emphasis on its public-facing goals. So for example, this may include administrative costs, artistic and other personnel fees, space and equipment rental, marketing and promotion costs, and other infrastructure costs related to delivering in-person or online programming, such as ticketing software fees, streaming platforms, or social distance markers. And LMCC will consider supporting up to 75% of your total project cost. So this means that you will need to show a plan to raise the remainder of your budget from other sources, which can be either in cash or in-kind contributions. LMCC is committed to the payment of artists, and therefore we do require that all participating professionals are paid a fee as reflected in your budget. We don't dictate the amount, as we do understand that applications are working at all different scales, but we do require that you include a fee of some level. And individual artists, this means you too. Make sure that you are including a fee for yourself in your budget. And for creative learning applicants only, as we have mentioned, if you are awarded state funds, you may use up to $200 of your state award to support participation in professional development training, seminars, and/or conferences. So now we've talked about what creative engagement and creative learning can support. Let's go ahead and talk about what these funds cannot be used towards. So again, we're going to talk about creative engagement and creative learning, and then we'll talk about some things that are specific to each of these programs. So within both programs, we cannot fund unrelated administrative or operating costs. So remember, these are project grants, so all costs do need to be connected to realizing the proposed project. And so this also means that we cannot cover startup costs for new organizations or capital acquisitions. And you'll want to make sure that you apply with only one project or program strand, rather than an entire year's worth of different programs. A series or festival is okay, but it is important that there be a clear overarching theme or artistic thread, and that it makes sense in terms of shared costs in the production plan for this series or events. A couple more things that we cannot support: fellowships, cash prizes, free grants, or residencies without a public component. So again, we're trying to get the funds directly to the arts activities that will reach a public rather than an intermediary or development stage. Additionally, we cannot support projects that are restricted to any kind of membership or projects where the arts component is not the primary focus, including humanities projects. So this may include standalone lectures, historic walking tours, or events that take a theoretical approach to talking about art, but don't present artistic works. And lastly, funds cannot be used to support fundraisers, parties, or reception costs. So if you are planning to have a reception as a part of your project, that's fine. We completely support that. But do keep in mind that you should not be using LMCC's funds to support those costs. So up next, this restriction is for creative engagement only. Works in progress showings solely for the development of new work cannot be supported by LMCC's funds. We do know that this is a common one for performing arts, and in our experience, works in progress are not as competitive and they're rarely as impactful for the public audiences. So if you are planning to apply with a performing arts project, please come to us for the showing of the finished work. Now, the following restrictions are for creative learning only. As I mentioned earlier, this program is not for in-school arts education projects, so projects must take place in a community-based setting. And creative learning is also not for projects with an audition or merit-based selection process to determine who participates. So you may design the program for a particular group defined by age, skill level, neighborhood, or other, but the program must then be widely promoted to people within this target group, and registration should be on a first-come, first-served basis. Participants should self-select if they are part of the group that you target. So you should ask yourself, if someone within the group found out about it, would they be able to attend? And lastly, creative learning cannot support professional arts training programs. So for instance, a vocal training for professional opera singers. You can review a full list of funding restrictions within the program guidelines. And if you have any questions, please be sure to contact us and we'll provide further guidance. Okay, so now that you know which program you should apply for based on your activities, let's talk about who you are as an applicant and which funding you are eligible for. So there are 3 entities that we can support: nonprofit organizations, individual artists, and collectives, including project-based collaborations and unincorporated groups. We're going to go through the key eligibility requirements for all 3 entities to access city and/or state funds. So keep in mind that the difference between accessing funds through LMCC or between DCLA or NISCA directly is generally about the capacity of the applicant and whether the applicant has the infrastructure needed to interact with an agency or organization directly and meet their requirements. So these next slides are going to help you to navigate which funding source you can access depending on if you are applying as an organization or as an individual or collective. And keep in mind that the eligibility requirements are the same for both creative engagement and creative learning. So let's talk about organizations first. For those of you that are applying as organizations, there are several core eligibility requirements that you have to meet. So organizations must be based in Manhattan, they must have proof of nonprofit status, and organizations must have a core artistic mission and/or history of arts programming. So once you have established that you meet the core eligibility requirements, you should then first see if you meet the city requirements, and then you can see if you meet the state requirements. So let's talk about city first. City funds are for smaller organizations. So organizations accessing city funds must have operating budgets under $100,000 for 2 of the last 3 completed fiscal years. Additionally, organizations may not already be receiving funds directly from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs for the same fiscal year. So that means that if you applied directly to DCLA earlier this year, but you did not receive funding, you can still apply to us. Also, you as an organization cannot be a New York City agency or department. Now let's look at the requirements organizations must meet to apply for state funds. So for state, there is no restriction on the total operating budget size, but the organization may not be directly applying to the New York State Council on the Arts for funding in the same fiscal year, regardless of funding status. So this means that if you applied to NYSCA earlier this year, regardless of whether you were funded through that application, you cannot apply for state funds through LMCC this year. And of course, if you are a New York State agency or department, you are not eligible to apply. So let's recap. Organizations that are applying to Creative Engagement or Creative Learning, this is what's available to you. If you, as an organization, meet only the city requirements, then you can apply for up to $5,000. If you, as an organization, meet only the state requirements, then you can apply for up to $5,000 as well. But if you, as an organization, meet the requirements for both city and state, you can apply for up to $9,000. So now let's move on to individuals and collectives. So collectives or project-based artist collaborations must designate a lead artist to apply on behalf of the group as an individual artist. So the lead artist, therefore, has to meet all of the individual artist requirements, and they must have a primary or directorial role or a decision-making role and be responsible for the project that you are applying with. So let's take a look at the core eligibility requirements for individuals and collectives. So city funds first, which you can see on the left-hand side of the screen. For city funds, individuals must reside or have a permanent workspace in Manhattan. And that's it. It's that simple. All individual artists who are living in Manhattan should apply for city funds. Now, one note to keep in mind here is that individuals may not apply or receive funds on behalf of an organization. So if you're an artist and you work for a nonprofit, you cannot apply on behalf of the nonprofit just because you live in Manhattan. The nonprofit has to apply to us directly and meet the requirements as an organization. Okay, so now let's take a look at state funds. And as I mentioned previously, the difference between applying directly to NYSCA versus through LMCC is really about capacity. So if you are an individual applicant, the state wants you to work with an organization as a community partner, as this assumes that you have the capacity of the organization behind you as you carry out the project. So as an individual artist, to apply for state funds, you must reside or have permanent workspace in Manhattan, and you must also be working with a partner organization, which must be a nonprofit organization that is collaborating with you to realize the project that you will be proposing. So this means that the partner organization meets the following requirements. It is a primary project collaborator and contributes monetary or other types of resource to the project, such as facilities, materials, and outreach. The organization is based in Manhattan, and the organization has proof of nonprofit status. Lastly, the partner organization may not be directly applying to NYSCA for a grant in the same fiscal year. And because the partner organization cannot be applying or receiving NYSCA funding in the same fiscal year, this partner organization is more than likely going to be a community or social service organization. Keep in mind that if, as an individual artist, you do have this type of partner organization, we will ask you for a letter of commitment that confirms their participation, role, and any contributions to the project. And keep in mind that this is an eligibility requirement for individuals accessing state funds with a partner organization. However, you may also have other partner organizations that will be supporting your project, even if you are not applying to access state funds. So while this is a requirement for those seeking state funds, a letter of commitment from a partner organization is always beneficial to your application. And we recommend that you start coordinating this letter with your partner early on, because the more detail that it includes, the better. In our experience, we've actually seen these letters sway the jury in the review process. So finally, if you are awarded state funds, it's important to keep in mind that it will go to you as an individual unless you designate your partner as the recipient or fiscal sponsor for the project. And I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. Okay, great. So those are the requirements to access state funds as an individual. So just to quickly recap, if you are an individual artist and you currently live in Manhattan or have a permanent workspace in the borough, you should apply for city funds for up to $5,000 through CreativeEngagement or CreativeLearning. And if you are working with a Manhattan-based nonprofit organization that does not apply to NISCA funds, you are also eligible for state funds. So therefore, you can apply for a total of up to $9,000 through CreativeEngagement or CreativeLearning. Okay, so now let's take a quick moment to talk about fiscal sponsorship. For those of you who are less familiar, a fiscal sponsor is a tax-exempt nonprofit organization that lends you its exempt status so that you can apply for certain grants or give your individual donors tax-deductible incentives. You do not need to work with a fiscal sponsor to apply to CreativeEngagement or CreativeLearning. If you choose to work with a fiscal sponsor, here's what you need to know. For city funds, it's pretty simple. You can work with a fiscal sponsor of your own choice. However, for state funds, only your partner organization can be designated as your fiscal sponsor. So this means that they will receive your money on your behalf. And please note that the partner relationship and requirements that we spoke of earlier really take priority here. So in addition to them being a primary collaborator and meeting the eligibility requirements, you can also have the partner receive and manage your funds on your behalf as a fiscal sponsor. If you have more questions or need more detailed information, you can find it in the program guidelines. Okay, so right now you have everything that you need to know in order to be eligible to apply. But what happens after you actually submit your application? So the review process goes like this. As soon as you submit, you'll receive an automated message confirming receipt of your application to the email associated with your submittable account. And after the deadline, our staff reviews every application for completeness and eligibility for the program. So during this time, you should expect to hear from us. We do try to give everyone an opportunity to correct a genuine error in the application if needed. But that said, this is not an opportunity for an ineligible application to then become eligible. And please note that only eligible and complete applications will then move forward to be reviewed in the jury meetings. So let's go ahead and talk about the jury review process. How does that actually work? So LMCC utilizes a peer review process, and this means that juries are comprised of artists and arts professionals who are active in the field. The jury changes from year to year and is specific to each program, and the jury is actually selected after the application deadline in order to ensure that it is reflective of the applicant pool. LMCC places priority on assembling diverse juries whose members reflect a balance of backgrounds and expertise in a variety of areas, including artistic genre and form, racial, ethnic, and cultural background, and knowledge and familiarity of Manhattan neighborhoods and communities. If you would like to nominate yourself or someone else to be considered for the jury, please use the jury nomination form that is available in the video summary below. And this process is set up to ensure that projects are reviewed based on their merit and their ability to address the program criteria, noting that all of the criteria are weighted equally. So you might remember what the criteria are, but here's just a quick refresher. And remember, because these programs have such different program goals and support very different activities, we have two different sets of criteria for each. So we're going to go ahead and start with creative engagement, and then we'll come back to talk about creative learning later. And remember, creative engagement is for projects that connect audiences to rich artistic experiences. So these are the four criteria for creative engagement, and keep in mind that they are all considered equally. First is the artistic excellence, taking into consideration the audience experience, including project relevance to the intended audience and the artistic vision and goals. So at LMCC, we ask the jury to take into consideration the context in which you are working when assessing the artistic excellence and audience experience of your project. So be sure that your project description and work samples speak to the audience experience, and consider questions such as, what are your goals and vision for the project? Why is the project of interest to you? And why are you seeking to reach this particular audience with your work? Second is the clarity of the project proposal, as demonstrated by the cohesiveness of the application and adequately conveying all elements of the project. So this is where we ask the jury if they can envision your project based on the information provided in the application. And this is where I would also recommend that you have a friend or outside party take a look at your application and let you know if they felt there was anything left out or if there were any incongruities. Third is the project feasibility. So that takes into consideration the production plan, budget, and capacity to achieve stated goals, including past experience and/or planned collaboration. So this really comes down to if you have a realistic and well thought out plan to carry out the project. And fourth is the appropriateness of the outreach and marketing plans, as demonstrated by an explicit understanding of the intended audience, relevant networks, and strategies to reach them. So who are you trying to reach with this project? What are your networks and experiences in the community in which you're working? What is your marketing plan? Be really specific. So those are the creative engagement criteria. Now let's talk about creative learning. And as a reminder, creative learning is for artist-led, age and skills appropriate learning sessions in community-based settings, as well as arts education-based approaches to participatory art projects for all ages. There are also 4 points of criteria in creative learning. And these are, first, the artistic excellence of the project design, taking into consideration the depth of the creative process and the artistic exploration and connection of the learning experience to the intended participants. So how are you taking participants through a learning experience? What is the substance and approach to the project? How hands-on is it? How engaging? Work samples are a really great way here to demonstrate the participants' artistic experience. Second is the expertise and alignment of the proposed teaching artist, as demonstrated by clear learning goals, teaching methodologies, and relevant past experience. So who are the teaching artists? What is the teaching approach and experience? How are the learning goals suitable for the intended participants? And the lesson plan can be really relevant here. So we'll talk about this more in a minute. Third is the appropriateness of the outreach and recruitment plans, as demonstrated by an explicit understanding of the target participants and the relevant networks and strategies to engage them. So how are you defining your target participants? How do your recruitment plans and networks ensure their participation? Fourth is the project feasibility, taking into consideration the budget, community partnerships, and capacity to reach learning objectives within the project's time frame. So can the learning goals be accomplished in the number of sessions offered? Does the budget support the feasibility of the project? If you have a partner organization, their letter of commitment may also add to the jury's confidence for your project's feasibility. So those are creative learning's criteria. And as a quick reminder, for both programs, you'll want to make sure that your application materials address all of the 4 criteria. And ideally, your application as a whole should address each of the criteria. So now you might be wondering about the timeline for hearing back about your application status. So the review timeline looks a little bit like this. The deadline, again, to apply is Tuesday, September 29th at 5 p.m. Once you hit submit, you will immediately receive a confirmation email that is connected to your account. Then staff will review your application for completeness, and you should expect to hear back from us during this time. And then once the jury evaluates and makes recommendations for funding, the decisions will then undergo a board approval process. And this process is not designed to overturn any decisions that are made by the jury, but rather to assess the staff protocols from the launch of the programs to the jury meetings to ensure that they have been held to the highest level of integrity on LMCC's side. Then all grantees will be contracted in March, and because we have to go through all of these steps, checks will then be cut in April. Okay, great. So we're almost there. Let's talk about how to apply in the online application form. So as you might remember, we use submittable.com for all of our application forms. Here's a few important reminders. Please use an active email address to connect to your Submittable account. LMCC will message you directly on Submittable, so be sure that the lead applicant is the account holder and has continuous access to the email and checks it regularly. Additionally, please note that the application form and application tips online have more information about Submittable. So if you have any trouble creating an account, please contact us. You will also see that CreativeEngagement and CreativeLearning application forms are structured into two parts. So part one is the project proposal, which you can see at the top of the screen here. And then part two is the applicant profile, which you can see in the second half of the screen here. So when you visit the application form, we highly encourage you to pay close attention to the detailed instructions and tips that will appear at the right side of the form, because these are useful hints to help you to approach each section. You can also visit our application tips on our website, which is another link that you can find in the description box below. Please note that the application form uses conditional logic, so make sure to fill out the applicant type, so nonprofit organization, individual artist, or collective, as well as your funding history with LMCC, so new or returning, which are questions that are at the very beginning, and this will enable you to see all of the relevant sections that you'll then need to complete. And you'll notice that if you are an individual artist or nonprofit organization who applied in 2018 or later, not all required documents are asked from you this year. So in order to make this process easier for you, LMCC will go ahead and use the documents that we already have on file for you. And the application form will prompt you if you do need to provide any updated documents this year. So again, it's really important that you make sure to complete the funding history questions in the application before proceeding on to the rest of the form. And additionally, please make sure to note that the application form, Additionally, please note that there are different word limits for each narrative question. So make sure to keep an eye out for these, especially if you're planning to work on the narrative responses in a separate document and then copy and paste them back into the application form. You'll want to make sure that you keep an eye on those word limits, so once you do paste it back in, your text isn't getting cut off at all. Okay. So during this session, we're not going to get into the entire application, but we are going to focus on two parts because these are the areas that we get the most questions about, and that would be the budget and the work samples. So remember, the program guidelines do outline all of the materials and documents that are key to showing you're eligible and that you'll need to complete the online application form. And then the online application form itself does have step-by-step instructions. So make sure that you go and visit and fully review the program guidelines after this video and take a dive into the application form itself to become familiar with it. And if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. So we are going to now talk about the project budget. And I'm actually going to take a moment to actually pull up the project budget template itself so that we can walk through it together. But before we do so, just a couple of notes. The structure of the project budget is very similar for CreativeEngagement and CreativeLearning, but you will want to make sure that you're using the right template for each program. And in order to submit the project budget, you will need to download the template from LMCC's website or directly from the application form itself. And once you do so, you'll fill out the budget using Excel and then upload it back into the application form. So now let's move over to Excel so I can actually show you the budget. Okay, fantastic. So here you can see the structure of LMCC's project budget, and right now we're looking at the creative engagement budget specifically. And this is set up to show reviewers the total cost of your project, so the total expenses, how much money you plan to raise, so the total income, as well as how much money you need from LMCC in order to balance the cost of your project. So this is the ask or request from LMCC. So now let's take a look at each section. So up here in this top section, you'll see where you will enter all of your planned cash income. So you're going to enter both earned income, so that's maybe projected ticket sales or merchandise sales, if applicable, as well as contributed income. So if you're applying to other foundations for grants or seeking corporate sponsorship or accepting donations from individuals, etc. And you'll notice here that there are 3 columns. So in the middle, you will see a description for each category of projected income that you have. So you should include here as much detail as you can so that you don't leave the jury in the dark about how you're coming up with these total amounts. So for instance, if you plan to sell tickets, you'll want to be sure to include a breakdown for how many tickets you estimate selling and what your different ticket income levels are if you have different levels of tickets for attendees. And then of course, next to it, you'll want to include the amount. And then finally, in this 3rd column, you'll mark an X if any of this income is secured. So say you have already received a grant from another foundation. You'll put in what the name of the foundation is, the amount that you're receiving from them, and mark an X next to it to indicate that it has already been secured for your project. So now moving down to this middle section, you're going to enter your cash expenses here. So this will include all costs that are related to your project, such as artistic, administrative, and other personnel, marketing and promotion costs, space rental, insurance, etc. And similarly, you'll want to use the description column to provide details about how you are calculating the total dollar amount of the expense for each category. So for instance, when you're entering the amount for artistic fees, you want to show how you're calculating these. So for instance, how many artists will you be paying and how are you paying them? Are these stipends, hourly? Go ahead and show that breakdown so the jury can gain a full understanding of how you're actually calculating that amount. And then finally, similarly in the expense section, you'll use this final column to indicate how you will actually be allocating LMCC's funds. So you'll mark an X next to any expense category that you intend to use LMCC's funds towards. And it likely won't be for every expense area, so just mark it next to the areas where you actually intend to use some of your grant funds towards. Okay, so finally, at the bottom of the template, you will see the in-kind contribution section. And for those who might not be familiar, in-kind resources are goods or services that you would have had to pay for otherwise if they were not being donated to your project. So anytime that you include something in the section, whether it be a good or a service, you must also include a dollar value that you will be assigning to it. Because remember, if the item or service were not being donated to you, then you would have to pay for it out of cash. So it does have a dollar value. So once you have completed these 3 sections, the budget template will then automatically calculate your request amount. And this request amount is calculated by subtracting your total income from your total expenses, as this will show how much funding from LMCC is necessary in order for you to cover all of the expenses that you have outlined in the budget. So this number will become your ask to LMCC to ensure that you have a balanced budget. So make sure that your request is not a negative number, as this means that you don't need money. It means that you have more income than you have expenses for the project. So you'll want to double check your numbers here. And also make sure that the request does not exceed 75% of your total project budget. And the template has a tip here on how to actually calculate that. So this means that to ensure that your budget is balanced, you will need to show a plan to raise the remainder of your project budget through other sources, whether that be in-kind or cash planned income. And just a couple final notes on the project budget. Individual artists, please note that self-funding is not considered income for the purposes of this program. So we want to make sure that you are paid a fee. And remember, we require that all participating professional artists are guaranteed a fee. So if you are an individual applicant, don't forget to pay yourself and your collaborators. And along with the project budget, there will also be a narrative question in the application form so that you can provide complementary information and additional detail on your fundraising ideas, financial or in-kind resources for the project. And this is how you will indicate all of the ideas that you have to raise the funds necessary for your project. And finally, please remember that all expenses should be project specific, and this means that they should also be incurred between January 1st and December 31st, 2021. And in the video summary below, you'll find a link to an in-kind contributions resource guide, which is also available on LMCC's professional development page at lmcc.net if you're looking for more information on how to value your in-kind contributions. Okay, great. So now we're going to segue out of the budget to talk about work samples, as well as lesson plans and what happens after you submit the application. Okay. So we are going to outline the formats that you can provide work samples in, how many, and the technical considerations that you'll want to keep in mind, as well as some guidance on how to actually select your work samples. And keep in mind that there are some key differences between creative engagement and creative learning. So on the screen, you will see the work sample format options available for creative engagement. So if you're applying to creative engagement, you can choose one of the following format options. You can choose to upload 2 audio or video recordings, or 10 images, or a 10-page manuscript. Or you may choose to upload a combination of these formats, such as 1 audio or video recording and 5 images, or 1 audio video recording and a 5-page manuscript, or 5 images and a 5-page manuscript. For creative learning, as I mentioned, new this year, all applicants are required to provide a lesson plan in addition to work samples. So we're going to talk about that lesson plan in a moment, but keep in mind that there are 3 format options for the work samples you can submit along with the lesson plan. So you can choose to submit 1 audio or video recording along with the 5-page lesson plan, or 5 images in the 5-page lesson plan, or a 5-page manuscript with the 5-page lesson plan. And before we actually move on, I'd like to take a moment just to highlight a few things regarding recordings. So if you are planning to upload a recording as a part of your chosen work sample format option, make sure that these are uploaded to Vimeo, YouTube, or SoundCloud. We don't accept video submissions from other platforms. And keep in mind that you can password protect these, but make sure that the password remains unchanged until March 2021 so that we can continue to access it as needed. You can also provide a cue point of when you want the jury to start viewing or listening to the recording. So choose the most dynamic and compelling part of the sample. And we play each recording for up to 2.5 minutes, starting at that cue point. However, we do encourage you to provide the full length of video or audio whenever possible, as oftentimes the jury wants to move forward in a sample to see how the work actually unfolds. And we do accept CDs or DVDs, but keep in mind that these must be playable on a Mac laptop, and we must receive them by the deadline of September 29th at 5 p.m. And make sure that you do adhere to these format options that I've highlighted. I know this may seem minor, but given the volume of applications received and reviewed by the jury, using the correct format ensures that they can focus on the artistry in the sample and that there's no distraction by a wonky video or audio or a sample that cannot be played. Okay, so now let's talk about choosing work samples and what they actually do for the application. So these apply to creative engagement and creative learning with just a few exceptions that I'll make sure to point out. So first, keep in mind that the aim of the work samples is to bring the jury as close as possible to an actual experience of the work. So you may want to ask yourself, for creative engagement, do you get a sense of the artist's vision and interest? In creative learning, do you get a sense of your participants' learning experience? And we encourage work that has been created within the past 3 years, because remember, the jury is supporting you as an artist now. So if you are going to submit some older samples, please be sure to tell us why using that work sample inventory. Avoid redundancy. So look at your samples with regard to how they relate to one another, and think about what each sample adds to the jury's understanding of your work. Make sure to use the maximum number of submissions allowable based on the work sample format option that you chose. And provide brief and clear information about each sample using that work sample inventory. So tell the jury what they are seeing, where they are in the sample, and its relevance to the project. Okay, so just a few quick notes on some specific items for creative engagement and creative learning. So for creative engagement, keep in mind that complete work is better than works in progress for the purposes of these work samples. So keep in mind that these grants are for the presentation of work. They're not solely for the creation of work. So if you are submitting a work sample because it feels critical to the jury's understanding of your proposed project, make sure that you're also submitting a sample of completed work. However, if you are doing an installation and you have a rendering of it, this can actually be really helpful, so do make sure to include that. And a quick note for performing artists, we do highly recommend that you submit at least one video as a part of your work samples. And so for theater artists who may be unable to provide a video due to equity guidelines, we'd recommend that you also provide an original script alongside images from past productions as available. For creative learning, we strongly encourage applicants to submit education-based work samples. So we recommend an original work samples. So that would be documentation of classroom work or samples of participants' work that demonstrate your ability as a teaching artist. And remember, this will help the jury to envision your project as a participant. And arts organizations should submit samples of the teaching artists that will actually be involved in the project. If education-based project work samples are not available, applicants may submit samples of work in non-educational settings by artists who will be involved in the project. Now, just a quick note on the lesson plan. As we mentioned, this lesson plan document is a new requirement this year, and it's an opportunity to provide a breakdown of the proposed curriculum and demonstrate the teaching artist approach to the learning goals. So as such, it should describe the activities and learning objectives that participants will engage with in each of the sessions, as well as demonstrate the overarching methodologies in place. And if you do not have a lesson plan prepared for the proposed project, you may also provide a past lesson plan with similar learning goals, artistic disciplines, or aid groups that demonstrates your approach. If you are unsure how to prepare a lesson plan or have not prepared one in the past, LMCC also has a lesson plan template that is available to you as a guide for creating your own. Okay, so time to submit. Keep in mind, again, the deadline to submit your application is Tuesday, September 29th, 2020 at 5 p.m. And once you have submitted your application, you will not be able to go back and make changes. So make sure that you review all of your responses within the application before actually hitting submit. And you should receive a confirmation via email of your submission as soon as you do hit submit. So if you do get a grant, we will be so excited to be able to support your project. We're going to send you a contract that you will need to sign that outlines your responsibilities as well as ours. During the year, you'll need to include LMCC and corresponding funders and all of your promotional materials related to the project. And then you'll be responsible for filling out a final report at the conclusion of your project. If you don't get a grant, call us for feedback. We take thorough notes during the jury discussion and can talk to you about what the strengths and the weaknesses of the proposal were. We offer feedbacks for both funded and non-funded participants. So thank you so much for spending time with us to review the Creative Engagement and Creative Learning programs and application processes. Now that you are once again acquainted with the programs, make sure to review the full program guidelines and online application form. And as you start working on your applications, please do contact us with questions ahead of the deadline or join us for the virtual office hours. In the video summary below, you will again find our contact information, which you can also see here on the screen, as well as links to all of the resources that we have referenced throughout this session. And all of this information is available at lmcc.net/Manhattan Arts Grants. And one last time, the deadline to apply is Tuesday, September 29th, 2020 at 5 p.m. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to reading your applications.